Clark has. If she started a league tomorrow, I promise you it's the end of the WNBA. But I want to play some footage. I want you guys to listen to it. Let's roll it.
Not speaking to the media.
Tonight?
Tonight.
She's not speaking to the media tonight?
She has said she is unavailable for media. She will make a statement, but not take questions.
I did not know that.
After another controversial game involving Caitlin Clark, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert chose not to face the media, and that decision spoke louder than any statement she could have made. Instead of taking questions or holding a press conference, she released a written statement and then disappeared from public view. There were no explanations, no accountability, and no direct response to the growing concerns. That silence gave many people the impression that the league's leadership either didn't have convincing answers or wasn't prepared to address the controversy, revealing just how difficult the WNBA's current situation has become.
Taking a class on organizational leadership right now. Just
the
to keep my brain. This is perfect timing. When you don't set the tone at the top with ethics, with values, with your leadership, then, as in Christie's statement comes, you can let people run amok.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kathy does not have a relationship where she can pick up the phone, should have picked up the phone, whether it's AT now or somebody else back then, and said, hey, what's going on? How can we help you? Mm-hmm. That is not happening. That's why you get the comments from Nafisa Collier last year. Mm-hmm. So you have to set the tone with your ethics.
Helen explained that this is what happens when leadership at the top fails, and her message highlights a serious issue. When leaders don't set clear values, build strong relationships with players, or create standards that everyone understands and follows, the result is confusion and conflict. Players begin to feel unsupported, coaches are left in difficult situations, and fans become divided. According to her, that's exactly what's happening in the WNBA today. She also pointed out that Commissioner Kathy Engelbert doesn't appear to have the kind of trust and communication with players that strong leadership requires. Many people saw similar concerns during the Derica Hamby situation, and now the way the league has handled the incidents involving Caitlin Clark has only added to those doubts. The biggest problem, she argues, is the growing disconnect between the league office and the players who are actually on the court.
You have to make sure that people buy into that. But if you don't have a relationship with the people that you work with, it's kind of hard because they don't know if there is anything to buy into. Right. So it starts at the top and it trickles down. And what we're seeing is a lack of leadership, a lack of, from the outside, I will say, looks like a lack of empathy, a lack of caring, and a lack of structure where there are consequences for the people that do these things. Now, you cannot police social media. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. No.
But you can have
unfortunately.
You can have a stronger stance. You can find ways to communicate that strong stance on a consistent basis. What Kathy has done is she's just put people in an impossible situation. Yeah. Stephanie White is in an impossible situation. Mm-hmm. She's damned if she do and damned if she don't, because obviously she's going to have to, take up for Caitlin Clark, whether she can defend or not. Right?
Helen explained that this is where the real problems become clear. Indiana head coach Stephanie White is stuck in a situation where every decision brings criticism. When Caitlin Clark takes hard hits on the court, Stephanie is expected to stand up for her, but if she speaks out too strongly, she's accused of asking for special treatment. If she stays quiet or doesn't defend her enough, fans become upset and question her support for the team. It's a position where there seems to be no right answer. Helen also believes the issue has grown far beyond basketball. In her view, the game has become the center of much larger debates involving race, fairness, who receives protection, the clash between longtime supporters and newer fans, and the influence of media coverage and social media. Basketball may be where these conflicts are happening, but the deeper problems extend well beyond what takes place on the court.
Asking her and Caitlin to work out, hey, Caitlin, you need to do better. You need to be a better leader, blah, 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 blah. But she's in an impossible situation. because people don't like the fact that she defends her, but then the other people don't like the fact if she didn't defend her. This honestly has nothing to do with basketball. This just happens to be the arena in which this behavior is happening.
Wowza. That's a word right there, Helen, for sure. Because I know, Cindy, you just said that, Kathy Engelbert's not going to take questions, but if she has a statement tonight, I hope, wish, and pray that it has something to do with what has happened with Alyssa Thomas in this situation and getting death threats. I hope, wish, and pray that that is addressed. And like you said, the ethics piece, Helen, that needs to be...
The situation has now reached an even more serious level. After a physical play involving Caitlin Clark, Alyssa Thomas reportedly began receiving death threats, turning a basketball controversy into something far more alarming. The analysts believe the biggest question is whether the commissioner's statement will address those threats and acknowledge just how out of control the situation has become. Helen argues that this is ultimately an issue of leadership and ethics. For nearly 3 decades, the WNBA built its reputation around community, respect, teamwork, and the idea that the game was bigger than any one player. Those values helped define the league, but now the foundation appears to be under growing pressure as increased attention, greater financial stakes, and leadership challenges expose deeper problems the league seems unprepared to manage.
Top tier. That needs to be what this league has stood on for 30 years, right? The love of the game being the star and the way things are being handled. And you can't police social media. And to your point, that's just, and I wish you could. I mean, you could block people. I mean, and just mute and block, restrict all the things that you can do on social media. I've done, and I can do that too, to this, if people have something to say about what I'm saying on here, period. I don't care. I just love the game so much for what it stands for, right? And this would be such a missed opportunity to address the further growth of the ethics of the WNBA and what the WNBA has stood for, the inclusivity, the everyone standing together, like we saw that in the bubble, just the unified love that everyone presents for this game. And to have anyone come in from the outside trying to ruin that needs to be stopped. And that's what I hope, wish, and pray happens in that presser, with no questions coming in, but you have a statement to make. And I hope that's part of the statement, because there are too many people out here with blood, sweat, and tears and shoulders that this league has been built on for 30 years. And some that didn't even play in the league. Love the league the same way as people who actually got the opportunity to compete.
This is the part that should make everyone uncomfortable, no matter which side they support. The comparison being made is between the reaction to Sophie Cunningham's hard foul on JC Sheldon, which many fans celebrated, with some even wearing t-shirts and praising her as an enforcer while her social media following grew rapidly, and the reaction to Alyssa Thomas after her hard foul on Caitlin Clark. In that case, the response reportedly included death threats, racial slurs, and intense personal attacks. The point being raised is not simply about the fouls themselves, but about the very different reactions from fans and how those responses have fueled even more division and controversy around the league. The analysts argue that similar physical plays have received completely different reactions, with some fans calling for Alyssa Thomas to be suspended or even banned from the league, while other comparable incidents were widely celebrated. They believe the major difference was the race of the player involved, raising difficult questions that many people in leadership have been unwilling to address publicly. According to this perspective, avoiding those conversations ignores a deeper issue about how certain players are treated by parts of the fan base. The concern being raised is that some newer fans may be following the league primarily because of Caitlin Clark, viewing other players less as competitors and more as obstacles, a mindset that has intensified division and made the overall atmosphere around the WNBA even more polarized.
The opportunity to clear it, to make sure that it doesn't happen again, that there are legal repercussions to people who serve death threats to players in this league. I mean, if you go to the Trader Joe's and give somebody a death threat in there, you're going to jail. Like, you will be in trouble. So there has to be some level of the law that could also stand in the gap here to protect the ethics and the inclusivity and the love of the game of basketball, but what it serves as the love of team and the love of life. And that needs to be protected right now.
100%. I also want to push back on the narrative from some corners of the media, of the new faces in the media spaces, calling for special protections and rules for Caitlin Clark.
I have not seen them.
Wait, there already was one rule for her, was it not? The you can't touch anybody, and then it backfired because freedom of movement was it quote unquote not for Caitlin, and now she can't defend, so she's sitting on the bench.
Well,
I did not know that was.
The analysts believe the league needs to move beyond discussion and focus on real solutions, with better officiating at the top of the list. In their view, the refereeing must improve significantly because the current level isn't keeping up with the speed, skill, and intensity of today's players. They argue that the upcoming WNBA All-Star break and the international break provide the perfect opportunity for the league to make clear and visible improvements. Another concern is the lack of communication, as coaches regularly submit plays for review but often receive no meaningful feedback or explanation. Without accountability or a proper review process, frustration continues to grow. They warn that when inconsistent officiating is combined with rising emotions and a fan base that reacts strongly to every controversial call, it creates an environment where tensions can easily boil over. Their message is simple: the league needs to show real effort through meaningful changes, not just promises. The analysts believe the league also needs a clear system for handling officiating concerns, including a defined process for reviewing complaints and providing coaches with direct explanations about why certain calls were made or missed. They argue that the WNBA should publicly acknowledge major officiating mistakes, similar to how the NBA releases its last 2-minute reports, to show transparency and accountability. In their view, these steps would prove that the league is taking the issue seriously instead of simply hoping the controversy fades over time. They also point out that the complaints are no longer coming only from teams that lose games. Even coaches whose teams are winning have continued to file formal concerns about the quality of officiating, which they believe shows the problem is widespread rather than isolated.
You can't push off, right? You can't. She loves that two-hand push-off to create space, right? So she's getting whistled for the offensive foul. So the rule has already been put in place. Short of wrapping up that young woman in bubble wrap and sending her down the floor, I don't understand what more protection could happen in a contact sport.
I did not know
it's
that.
not about basketball,
Right.
though.
I know.
That is what it is couched in. It's not about basketball. And I don't care if Kathy does put out a statement. It's just a piece of paper. You need to be at that game tonight. And you need to be present. You need to have a strong physical, verbal presence. Yes. Whatever you were doing, you need to get on a flight and get there. Is the game in New York or is it in Vegas? I didn't have a chance to look. If it's in New York, it's down the street and around the corner.
I believe it's Vegas, but I'm not sure. What is it, Cindy?
Oh,
is it in Vegas?
Right. Vegas.
I think they have the better record right now. Vegas has the better record, and I'm just going with that.
Get on a charter flight. Get on a charter flight. Get your buns there. Be visible. Talk to the media. Strongly say this isn't what's supposed to happen, and these are the things that we are doing to protect our players. Because right now it looks like they're not being protected, and it's not just AT. It's a lot of other situations too. It's everybody that's not Caitlin Clark, and Caitlin Clark is. We all love her. We all think she's a player. She's going to be great. Just like any other player entering the league, there's stuff she's got to work on every year. She's got to get in the lab every summer. That's no different than anybody else. But this is couched in basketball. It has nothing to do with basketball. It just happens to be where they can press that narrative.
But what I like to do sometimes to better understand things is like flip the script.
The discussion then shifts to claims that the league is creating special rules to protect Caitlin Clark, but the analysts say it's important to separate facts from speculation. They point out that the freedom of movement rule is not new and was not introduced because of Caitlin. It has been part of the WNBA rulebook for years. What has changed is the way it is being enforced, and that change happened around the time of her rookie season. The rule prevents defenders from restricting an offensive player's movement with their hands, forearms, or body, and it applies equally to every player. According to the analysts, the real issue is inconsistent officiating. At times the rule is enforced, and at other times it is ignored. When it is called, some fans feel Caitlin benefits more often than others, leading to questions about whether officials are intentionally protecting her or simply paying closer attention because she is one of the league's most recognizable players. The analysts argue that without consistent officiating, those debates will continue to grow. Some of it may involve her, and some of it may not. But the idea that people want Caitlin Clark to be completely protected from physical play isn't really accurate. Most fans are simply asking for fair and consistent officiating. If she gets hit in the head while driving to the basket and no foul is called, that's an issue. If she's body-checked away from the ball without a whistle, that's also a problem, not because she's a star, but because those actions are fouls no matter who the player is. At the same time, the standard should apply to her as well. When Caitlin uses both hands to push off and create space, that's an offensive foul, and officials have been calling it more often this season. So the claim that the rules are being changed to protect her doesn't really match what happens on the court. The bigger issue is that officiating has been inconsistent across the league, and because Caitlin is the most closely watched player, every missed or questionable call involving her receives far more attention.
Ever been before, and they deserve better.
Yeah, I just think
No, I was gonna say, the officiating is bad when people who are winning games are complaining about it, right? It's not just the people who are losing. Like when I was a head coach and I had a complaint with the officials, I would always make sure I did it after I won, so it didn't sound like I was whining when I lost games. But it's not just people who are losing games. It's every coach of every team. With valid points about what is not happening with the officiating.
No doubt. And when I was coaching, you can scratch 2 officials going into the next season, right? Because it was just a rule, okay, that we had, okay? But it was so hard to do that because that's their livelihood, and they'll get other teams, they're not going to get scratched.
What really stands out is how broken the officiating system has become. The fact that coaches are allowed to remove 2 officials from working their games the following season shows the league already knows there is a serious problem. That is not how a strong officiating system operates. It is simply a temporary fix for a much bigger issue. In reality, any coach would use those choices to avoid referees they believe have shown poor judgment or possible bias. However, those officials are not removed from the league, they are simply assigned to other teams, which means the problem is shifted instead of being solved. Referees have careers, families, and responsibilities, and no one wants them to lose their jobs, but there still needs to be real accountability along with proper training and development to improve the overall quality of officiating. There needs to be a system that helps officials improve their performance, along with clear standards that determine whether they are qualified to keep working games. If a referee repeatedly fails to meet those standards, they should not continue receiving assignments. Right now, the WNBA is enjoying its highest level of talent, bigger audiences than ever, and more attention than at any point in its history, yet the quality of officiating has become one of its biggest weaknesses. That growing gap cannot continue forever. What makes this situation so important is that it goes far beyond one awkward press conference or one disputed game. The league is at a critical turning point, and the choices made today by league leaders, coaches, players, and even fans will shape what the WNBA becomes over the next decade. That is why the commissioner's decision to avoid answering questions would be considered a major story in almost any other professional sports league. Imagine if Adam Silver released a statement about a major controversy involving LeBron James or the Lakers and then refused to answer questions from reporters. It would dominate every sports network for days. Yet when something similar happens in the WNBA, it barely gets attention outside of dedicated fans and analysts because many people have come to accept it as normal. That mindset is part of the problem because it creates the impression that there is little accountability at the top. A professional sports commissioner is expected to face the media, answer tough questions, and show leadership during difficult moments. That responsibility comes with the job and helps set the standard for the entire league. When a commissioner relies only on written statements instead of speaking publicly, it can appear as though they are not confident defending their decisions in real time. That is likely what Kathy Engelbert was trying to avoid by choosing not to take questions. She likely would have been asked about the death threats directed at Alyssa Thomas, why the league did not immediately discipline the foul that triggered the controversy, the ongoing concerns about the physical play against Caitlin Clark, the perception that players are not being treated equally, and the racial issues that many believe cannot be ignored. It appears she decided she did not have strong answers to those difficult questions, so the easier choice was to avoid taking questions altogether. However, that decision comes with a cost. It can damage the league's credibility with its players because when they see the commissioner unwilling to openly discuss issues related to their workplace safety and mental well-being, it sends the message that their concerns may not be receiving the attention they deserve. It gives players the feeling that they are on their own and that the league office will not step in to protect them, forcing them to rely on their coaches, teams, player union, or even their own social media accounts to address serious issues. It also hurts the league's credibility with coaches. Stephanie White and the rest of the league's coaches are trying to manage difficult situations without clear direction from league leadership. No matter what decision they make, they face criticism because there is no consistent standard being set from the top, leaving them to make tough calls in the moment while knowing someone will always be unhappy. It also disappoints longtime fans who stood by the WNBA through its toughest years, supporting the league by attending games, buying jerseys, and purchasing tickets even when arenas were far from full and the league was still struggling financially. Many longtime fans supported the league when very few people were paying attention. They pushed for more coverage, greater respect, and stood by the WNBA through difficult years. Now, some of those fans feel the league is moving away from the values they believed in as it focuses on gaining mainstream attention and increasing revenue. That can create a deep sense of disappointment. At the same time, it also affects new fans who are trying to understand what the league represents. Millions of people started following the WNBA because of Caitlin Clark, and if their first impression is inconsistent officiating, ongoing controversy, players receiving death threats, and a commissioner unwilling to answer questions, many may either decide the league is too chaotic to follow or place all the blame on players other than Caitlin, adding even more division and negativity. Neither outcome benefits the league's future. What the WNBA needed in this moment was strong leadership that could bring people together, provide clear direction, and guide the league through these challenges. The league needed leadership that could welcome new fans while preserving the culture that longtime supporters have always appreciated. It needed to recognize Caitlin Clark's influence while also giving other star players the attention they deserve. It needed to address the racial issues honestly without allowing every discussion to revolve around them, and it needed to improve officiating and player safety for every player, not just the biggest names. Instead, the response was limited to a written statement with no meaningful follow-up, leaving a leadership void. That silence has been filled by fans arguing on social media, former players choosing sides, media personalities pushing different narratives, and coaches and players trying to navigate the situation without clear guidance. When leadership steps back, confusion and division quickly take its place, and that is exactly what has happened. This also connects to Helen's comments about ethics, which she described as a fundamental issue that has been part of the WNBA's story throughout its 28-year history. For 28 years, the WNBA built its identity by being different from other professional sports leagues. It emphasized community over individual stardom, encouraged players to support one another even as competitors, stood for social justice and activism, welcomed people to be their authentic selves, and placed a genuine love for the game above money and fame. That identity helped create one of the most loyal fan bases in professional sports. It inspired players to stay committed to the league even when salaries were lower because they believed in what it represented. It also motivated generations of young girls to dream of playing in the WNBA, not only because of the basketball but because of the values the league promoted. However, those values only matter if they are reflected in the league's actions, and that is what is being tested today. With more attention, greater financial opportunities, and millions of new fans arriving, the WNBA is facing challenges unlike anything it has experienced before. Many of the new fans did not start watching because of the WNBA's long-standing values. They came because of Caitlin Clark, and for many of them, she is the main focus. As a result, they often view everything happening in the league through her perspective rather than through the league's broader mission of community, social justice, and player support. That leaves the WNBA facing a difficult decision. Should it move away from the principles it was built on in order to attract even more mainstream success, or should it stay true to those values even if it risks losing some of the new audience driving record viewership? Based on her actions, Kathy Engelbert appears to have chosen neither path, instead relying on broad statements about respecting all players without directly addressing the specific issues. Rather than showing decisive leadership, that approach gives the impression of waiting for the controversy to fade on its own. The ongoing officiating concerns are a clear example of where stronger leadership is needed. Improving the quality of officiating is one issue where strong leadership could make an immediate difference because players, coaches, fans, and the media all agree that it needs to get better. There is very little disagreement on that point. The real question is why the league has not announced a complete plan to fix it. The WNBA has two natural opportunities to make meaningful changes during the All-Star break and the FIBA break. Those pauses could be used to bring officials together, review the most debated calls from the first half of the season, establish clearer standards, improve training, strengthen accountability, and publicly explain the changes so everyone knows the league is taking the issue seriously. Instead, many expect little to happen beyond small adjustments that fail to solve the underlying problems. Addressing the root causes would require acknowledging that the officiating system has deeper issues, and that admission would likely lead to questions about why those problems were not addressed sooner. As a result, it may seem easier to continue as things are and hope the situation improves on its own. People are not going to stop complaining because the stakes are much higher than they used to be. Every game now carries more importance since the league has attracted a much larger audience, and every call can influence playoff races, individual awards, and even future contract negotiations. The room for mistakes has become much smaller, but the quality of officiating has not improved at the same pace. That is what makes the Caitlin Clark situation so complicated. There is little doubt that she faces a high level of physical play, and anyone watching her games can see defenders often play her more aggressively than many other players. At the same time, some of that is expected because she is the top player on her team, and opponents naturally focus their defensive game plan on making things as difficult as possible for a star player, just as they do with other elite athletes.